Adapted from archaic translation by W.H.D. Rhys. Jataka number 172. Daddara-Jātaka. Who is it with a mighty cry, etc. This is a story which the master told at Jetavana monastery about one Khuddaka. At this time we hear that there were a number of very learned brethren in the district of Manasila, who spoke out like young lions, loud enough to bring down the heavenly Ganges, while reciting passages of scripture before the community. As they recited their texts, Khuddaka, not knowing what an empty fool he showed himself, thought he would like to do the same. So he went about among the brethren, not however taking the name upon him, but saying, "They don't ask me to recite a piece of scripture. If they were to ask me, I would do it." All the community got to know of it and they thought they would try him. "Friend Khuddaka," said they, "give the community a recital of some scriptures today." To this he agreed, not knowing his wrongdoing. That day he would recite before the community. He first ate of porridge made to his liking, ate some food, and had some of his favorite soup. At sundown the gong sounded for sermon time. All the community gathered together. The yellow robe, which he put on, was blue as a bluebell. His outer robe was pure white. Thus clad, he entered the meeting, greeted the elders, stepped up to a preaching seat under a grand jeweled pavilion, holding an elegantly carved fan, and sat down, ready to begin his recitation. But just at that moment beads of sweat began to start out all over him, and he felt ashamed. The first verse of the first stanza he repeated. But what came next he could not think. So rising from the seat in confusion, he passed out through the meeting, and searched for his own cell. Someone else, a real scholar, recited the scripture. After that all the brethren knew how empty he was. One day the brethren fell a-talking of it in the hall of truth. Friend, it was not easy to see formerly how empty Khuddaka is. But now he has given tongue of his own accord, and shown it. The master entered, and asked what they were discussing together. They told him. He said, "Brethren, this is not the first time Khuddaka has betrayed himself by his voice. The very same thing happened before." And then he told him an old world tale. Once upon a time, when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, the Bodhisattva was born as a young lion, and was the king of many lions. With a suite of lions he lived in Silver Cave. Nearby was a jackal, living in another cave. One day, after a shower of rain, all the lions were together at the entrance of their leader's cave, roaring loudly and gambolling about as lions use. As they were thus roaring and playing, the jackal too lifted up his voice. "Here's this jackal, giving tongue along with us," said the lions. They felt ashamed, and were silent. When they all fell silent, the Bodhisattva's cub asked him this question. "Father, all these lions that were roaring and playing about have fallen silent for very shame on hearing a creature. What creature is it that betrays itself thus by its voice?" And he repeated the first stanza. Who is it with a mighty cry makes Daddara reverberate? Who is it, Lord of beasts? And why has he no welcome found? At his son's words the old lion repeated the second stanza. The jackal, of all beasts most nasty, it is he that makes that sound. The lions dislike his lowliness, while they sit in silence round. Brethren, the master added, it is not the first time Khuddaka has betrayed himself by his voice. It was just the same before. And bringing his discourse to an end, he identified the birth. At that time Khuddaka was the jackal, Rahul was the young lion, and I was myself the Lion King. Source. Adapted from archaic translation by W.H.D. Rhys. Jataka number 173. Daddara-Jātaka. Father, see, a poor old fellow, etc. This story the master told while staying in Jetavana monastery, about a rogue. The circumstances will be explained in the Uddala Birth, book XIV. Here too the master said, "Brethren, not this once only has the fellow turned out a rogue. In days of past, when he was a monkey, he played tricks for the sake of a fire. And he told a tale of days long gone by. Once upon a time, when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, the Bodhisattva was born in a Brahmin family in a village of Kasi. When he came of years, he received his education at Taxila, and settled down in life. His lady in time had a son. And when the child could just run to and fro, she died. The husband performed her funeral rites, and then, said he, "What is home to me now? I and my son will live the life of hermits." Leaving his friends and family in tears, he took the boy to the Himalaya, became a religious hermit, and lived on the fruits and roots which the forest yielded. On a day during the rainy season, when there had been a downpour, he kindled some sticks, and lay down on a straw mattress, warming himself at the fire. And his son sat beside him touching his feet. Now a wild monkey, miserable with cold, saw the fire in the leaf hut of our hermit. "Now," thought he, "suppose I go in. They'll cry out 'Monkey, monkey,' and beat me back. I shall not get a chance of warming myself. I have it," he cried. "I'll get an ascetic's dress, and get inside by a trick." So he put on the bark dress of a dead ascetic, lifted his basket and crooked stick, and took his stand by the hut door, where he crouched down beside a palm tree. The boy saw him, and cried to his father, "Here's an old hermit, sure enough, miserably cold, come to warm himself at the fire." Then he addressed his father in the words of the first stanza, begging him to let the poor fellow in to warm himself. "Father, see, a poor old fellow huddled by a palm tree there. Here we have a hut to live in. Let us give the man a share." When the Bodhisattva heard this, up he got and went to the door, but when he saw the creature was only a monkey, he said, "My son, men have no such face as that. It is a monkey, and he must not be asked in here." Then he repeated the second stanza. "He would but defile our living if he came inside the door. Such a face, it is easy telling, no good Brahman ever had." The Bodhisattva seized a brand, crying, "What do you want there? Throw it at him," and drove him away. Mr. Monkey dropped his bark garments, sprang up a tree, and buried himself in the forest. Then the Bodhisattva cultivated the four excellences until he came unto Brahma's upper heaven. When the master had ended this discourse, he identified the birth. This tricky brother was the monkey of those days. Rahul was the hermit's son, and I myself was the hermit. Single quote. Source. Adapted from archaic translation by W.H.D. Rouse. Jataka number 174. Dubhya Makata Jataka. Plenty of water, etc. This story the master told in his stay at Velavana, about Devadatta. One day it happened that the brethren were talking in the Hall of Truth about Devadatta's ingratitude and treachery to his friends. When the master broke in, "Not this once only, brethren, has Devadatta been ungrateful and treacherous to his own friends. He was just the same before." Then he told him an old story. Once upon a time, when Brahmadatta was king of Benares, the Bodhisattva was born into a Brahmin family in a certain Kasi village, and when he grew of age, married and settled down. Now in those clays there was a certain deep well by the highway in Kasi land, which had no way down to it. The people who passed by that way, to win merit, used to pull water by a long rope and a bucket, and fill a trough for the animals. Thus they gave the animals water to drink. All around lay a mighty forest, in which troops of monkeys lived. It happened by a chance that for 2 or 3 days the supply of water ceased which travelers used to draw. and the creatures could get nothing to drink. A monkey, suffered with thirst, walked up and down by the well looking for water. Now the bodhisattva came that way on some work, brought water for himself, drank it, and washed his hands. Then he noticed our monkey. Seeing how thirsty he was, the traveler brought water from the well and filled the trough for him. Then he sat down under a tree, to see what the creature would do. The monkey drank, sat down near, and pulled a monkey grimace, to frighten the bodhisattva. "Ah, you bad monkey," said he, "at this, when you were thirsty and miserable, I gave you plenty of water. And now you make monkey faces at me. Well, well, help a rascal and you waste your pains." And he repeated the first stanza. "Plenty of water did I give to you, when you were feeling hot and thirsty too. Now full of mischief you sit chattering. With wicked people best have nothing to do." Then this spite-friend monkey replied, "I suppose you think that's all I can do. Now I'll drop something on your head before I go." Then, repeating the second stanza, he went on. "A well-conducted monkey who did ever hear or see. I leave my droppings on your head. For such are manners he." As soon as he heard this, the bodhisattva got up to go. But at the very instant this monkey from the branch where he sat dropped it like a festoon upon his head, and then made off into the forest shrieking. The bodhisattva washed, and went his way. When the master had ended this discourse, after saying it is not only now that Devadatta is so, but in former days also he would not acknowledge a kindness which I showed him, he identified the birth. Devadatta was the monkey then, and the Brahman was I myself. Source: adapted from archaic translation by W.H.D. Rouse. Jataka number 175. Adhikapathana Jataka. There is no tribe, etc. This is a story told by the master in Jetavana monastery, about a rogue. Once upon a time, when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, the bodhisattva was born in a Brahmin family of Kasi. Coming of years, he went to Taxila, and there completed his education. Then he embraced the religious life, cultivated the faculties and the attainments, and becoming the instructor of a large band of pupils he spent his life in Himalaya. There for a long time he dwelling. Until once having to buy salt and spices, he came down from the highlands to a border village, where he stayed in a leaf hut. When they were absent seeking alms, a mischievous monkey used to enter the hermitage, and turn everything upside down, spill the water out of the jars, smash the jugs, and finish by making a mess in the cell where the fire was. The rains over, the hermits thought of returning, and took leave of the villages. For now, they thought, the flowers and fruit are ripening on the mountains. Tomorrow, was the answer, we will come to your living with our alms. You shall eat before you go. So next day they brought there plenty of food, solid and liquid. The monkey thought to himself, I'll trick these people and persuade them into giving me some food too. So he put on the air of a holy man seeking alms, and close by the hermits he stood, worshipping the sun. When the people saw him, they thought, holy are they who live with the holy, and repeated the first stanza. There is no tribe of animals but Bath its virtuous one. See how this miserable monkey here stands worshipping the sun. After this fashion the people praised our monkey's virtues. But the bodhisattva, observing it, replied, you don't know the ways of a mischievous monkey, or you would not praise one who little deserves praise. Adding the second stanza. You praise this creature's character because you know him not. He has defiled the sacred fire, and broke each water pot. When the people heard what a rascally monkey it was, seizing sticks and stones they pelted him, and gave their alms to the brethren. The sages returned to Himalaya. And without once interrupting their mystic ecstasy they came at last to Brahma's upper heaven. At the end of this discourse, The master identified the birth. This hypocrite was in those days the monkey. The Buddha's followers were the company of sages, and their leader was I myself.